What if sinlessness is not the highest rank? What if constant obedience is not the same as chosen obedience? What if struggle is not a weakness, but the very arena of elevation? And perhaps the most unsettling question of all, if angels never disobey, never hesitate, never fall, why were they commanded to bow before a human being? Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to Reflection, where we explore the wisdom of the Qur'an through the lens of Tafsir al-Mīzān by ʿAllāmah Muḥammad Ḥusayn Ṭabāṭabāqqī. In our previous episode, we reflected on human dignity, how God honored the children of Adam, how He entrusted them with responsibility, and how Taqwa stabilizes that honor. But that reflection naturally leads to a deeper question. If human beings are honored, what is their rank within creation? Are human beings superior to angels? Or is that question itself too simplistic? To explore this, we must return to the moment that gave rise to this debate. When God announced the creation of Adam, the Quran tells us in Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah number 2, verse number 30, وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً قَالُوا أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ قَالَ إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. And when your Lord said to the angels, Indeed, I am placing upon the earth a vicegerent, they said, Will you place therein one who will cause corruption and shed blood, while we glorify you with praise and sanctify you? He said, Indeed, I know what you do not know. That exchange is not rebellion, it is inquiry. It is not arrogance, it is wonder. And it reveals something profound about both angels and human beings. Because the question is not merely who is better. The deeper question is, what are angels? What are human beings? And what does elevation actually mean within the divine order? Only once we understand their nature can we speak about rank. So in this episode of Reflection, we will explore what distinguishes angels and human beings ontologically, why knowledge, not merely obedience, is central to the human story, how free will creates both the possibility of elevation and collapse, and whether human superiority is inherent or conditional. Before we continue, pause for a moment and consider, when you imagine the highest spiritual rank, do you imagine purity without struggle or perseverance through it? Before we speak about superiority, we must clarify something more fundamental. What are angels and what is the human being? Because without understanding their nature, any discussion of rank becomes shallow. When God announced the creation of Adam, the moment we just heard, the angels asked a remarkable question. Would this new creature cause corruption and shed blood? Their response was not objection. It was reflection on what they understood about earthly existence. They knew that embodiment carries limitation. Limitation creates need. Need creates desire. And desire can create conflict. Their question reflects awareness, not defiance. In Tafsir al-Mīzān, ʿAllāmah Ṭabāṭabāqqī explains that the human being was created as a Khalifa, a vicegerent upon the earth. This role is not identical to the role of angels. Angels worship, human beings represent. Angels glorify continuously, human beings act within history. Angels are created in complete alignment with the divine command. They do not experience internal conflict. They do not oscillate between obedience and disobedience. The Quran describes them clearly in Surah Tahrim, Surah 66, verse 6. لا يعصون الله ما أمرهم ويفعلون ما يؤمرون. They do not disobey God in what He commands them, and they do precisely what they are ordered. Their obedience is flawless. Their orientation is constant. Their nature is stable. But the human being is totally different, created from clay, earthly, limited, vulnerable, yet also breathed into by divine spirit, as anchored in Surah Al-Hujurat, Surah 15, verse 29. فَإِذَا سَوَّيْتُهُ وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي فَقَعُوا لَهُ سَاجِدِينَ. When I have fashioned him and breathed into him of my spirit, then fall down before him in prostration. The human being carries two dimensions: the clay of the earth, fragile, limited, dependent, and the breath of divine spirit, the capacity to rise beyond those limitations. Angels are stable in perfection. Humans are dynamic in potential, and it is this potential that the angels had not yet witnessed. Pause for a moment. When you think about yourself, do you see only your limitations, or do you recognize the capacity that lies within your nature? If human beings carry both clay and spirit, both limitation and transcendence, then the next question naturally emerges. What exactly distinguishes this creature from the angels? What did God place within Adam that the angels did not possess in the same way? The Qur'an does not leave this undefined. It demonstrates it clearly. And that distinction begins with knowledge, as anchored in Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah number 2, verse 31 to 33. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا ثُمَّ عَرَضَهُمْ عَلَى الْمَلَائِكَةِ فَقَالَ أَنْبِئُونِي بِأَسْمَاءِ هَؤُلَاءِ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. And he taught Adam the names, all of them. Then he presented them to the angels and said, "Inform me of the names of these if you are truthful." قالوا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. They said, "Glory be to you. We have no knowledge except what you have taught us. Indeed, you are the all-knowing, the all-wise." قال يا آدم أنبئهم بأسمائهم فلما أنبأهم بأسمائهم قال ألم أقل لكم إني أعلم غيب السماوات والأرض. He said, "O Adam, inform them of their names." And when he informed them, he said, "Did I not tell you that I know the unseen of the heavens and the earth?" This moment is the turning point of the narrative. In Tafsīr al-Mīzān, ʿAllāmah Ṭabāṭabāʻī explains that the names are not merely vocabulary. They represent knowledge of realities, the capacity to perceive and understand the realities of creation. To act as a Khalifa, a vicegerent, requires comprehension. Knowledge is not ornamental, it is foundational. The prostration of the angels did not follow clay, it followed realized capacity. The angels did not bow to earth, they bowed to knowledge, and knowledge carries responsibility. Consider this carefully. Is knowledge in your life a source of humility and service, or does it quietly strengthen your attachment to yourself? If knowledge distinguishes the human being from the angels, another question immediately follows. What makes that knowledge morally meaningful? Because knowledge alone does not create elevation. Knowledge must be chosen, and choice requires freedom. Angels understand and obey, but they do not experience internal conflict. They are not pulled between obedience and desire. They are not torn between aspiration and appetite. The human being is, and in that tension lies possibility. In a tradition attributed to Imam Ali alayhi salam, this distinction is described with striking clarity. He said, "Inna Allah خلق الملائكة عقلا بلا شهوة وخلق البهائم شهوة بلا عقل وخلق الإنسان عقلا وشهوة فمن غلب عقله شهوته فهو خير من الملائكة ومن غلبت شهوته عقله فهو شر من البهائم." Allah created the angels with intellect and no desire, animals with desire and no intellect, and human beings with both. Whoever's intellect overcomes his desire is better than the angels, and whoever's desire overcomes his intellect is worse than the animals. This is not exaggeration. It is a description of the human condition. The angel's obedience flows naturally from its being. The animal's impulse flows naturally from instinct. But the human being stands between ascent and collapse, pulled upward by intellect, pulled downward by desire. And the Qur'an confirms this dynamic in Surah Al-Tin, Surah number 95, verse 4 to 6. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Indeed, we created the human being in the best of forms. Then we return him to the lowest of the low, except those who believe and do righteous deeds. No angel is described this way. Angels do not collapse. Humans can rise and humans can fall. And that dynamism is not weakness. It is the arena in which moral worth is formed. Reflect carefully. When you obey Allah, is it merely habit or is it conscious alignment in the face of competing desires? At this point in discussion, a danger begins to appear. If human beings can rise above angels through knowledge and moral struggle, does that mean angels are somehow lesser? Does their lack of internal conflict make their obedience inferior? The Qur'an does not allow that conclusion. Angels are described with extraordinary dignity. They are not mechanical beings. They are not passive instruments. They are conscious servants of immense purity. And the Qur'an reminds us in Surah Al-Anbiya, Surah 21, verse 26 to 27. بَلْ عِبَادٌ مُكْرَمُونَ لَا يَسْبِقُونَهُ بِالْقَوْلِ وَهُمْ بِأَمْرِهِ يَعْمَلُونَ. They are honored servants. They do not precede him in speech, and they act only by his command. Notice the description, Ibadun Mukramun, honored servants. The Qur'an itself affirms their honor. Their obedience is not inferior simply because they do not struggle. Struggle alone does not create value. What matters is alignment with the divine will. In Tafsir al-Mīzān, ʿAllāmah Ṭabāṭabāqqī clarifies that the absence of sin does not imply the absence of merit. The angel's harmony with the divine will is not mechanical, it is complete alignment. They glorify without distraction, they serve without ego, they carry revelation, they execute divine decree, and they inhabit a proximity to Allah that human beings must strive to approach. So, to reduce their station because they do not wrestle with desire is to misunderstand their nature entirely. Angels represent constancy, humans represent potential. Angels are stable in their station, humans are dynamic in their ascent or their descent. That is the distinction, not deficiency, difference. And this preserves the balance of the Quranic worldview. Because the prostration before Adam was not a humiliation of angels. It was a demonstration of human capacity. Pause and reflect carefully. When you think of angels, do you see abstract symbols? Or do you recognize them as honored beings whose nearness to Allah is uninterrupted and unwavering? After examining the nature of angels and the potential of humanity, we can now return to the question we began. Are human beings superior to angels? The answer is not absolute, it is conditional. Human superiority is not inherent, it is realized. Every human being is honored as we reflected in the previous episode, but not every human being actualizes that honor. The Qur'an reminds us in Surah Al-Tin, Surah number 95, verse 4 to 6, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ السَّافِلِينَ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Indeed, we created the human being in the best of forms. Then we return him to the lowest of the low, except those who believe and do righteous deeds. The human being begins with potential, but potential can collapse. Angels do not fall to the lowest of the low. Their station is stable. Human beings can ascend and human beings can descend. This is why superiority cannot be assigned to humanity as a category. It applies only to those who realize their capacity. In Tafsir al-Mizan, ʿAllāmah Ṭabāṭabāqqī explains that the prostration before Adam was not an endorsement of every human life. It was an acknowledgement of the capacity embedded within the human reality. When that capacity is realized through knowledge, faith, discipline, and taqwa, the human being reaches a station of nearness that angels themselves honor. This is why the prophets represent the summit of human possibility. They lived within the conditions of earthly struggle. They experienced hunger, loss, opposition, hardship, and rejection. Yet, they aligned themselves completely with the divine will. Their obedience was chosen. Their knowledge was embodied. Their taqwa was constant. And in that perfection of alignment, the human reality reached its highest expression. This is not arrogance. It is fulfillment of purpose. Angels reflect divine constancy. Prophets reflect realized vicegerency. Angels glorify without interruption. Prophets guide within interruption. And this is why the debate over superiority is ultimately misplaced. The question is not, are humans greater than angels? The question is, what kind of human are you becoming? The Qur'an ties elevation not to species but to consciousness, as anchored in Surah Al-Hujurat, Surah 49, verse 13. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. Indeed, the most honored of you in the sight of Allah is the one with the most taqwa. Taqwa is not panic or constant anxiety. It is vigilance, a steady awareness of Allah that guards the heart, disciplines desires, and stabilizes choice. It is dignity made conscious. Dignity was given, but rank is stabilized through taqwa. And superiority is not a birthright, it is the fruit of alignment. Ask yourself honestly, if angels represent constancy and prophets represent realized potential, where do you stand today, rising toward ascent or drifting toward collapse? Before we close, let's gather what we have uncovered. First, angels represent constancy. They are created in complete alignment with the divine will. Their obedience is pure, unwavering, and uninterrupted. Second, human beings represent potential. Created with intellect and desire, they live with intention, capable of rising above angels or falling below animals. Third, superiority is not inherent, it is conditional. Only those who discipline desire, realize their knowledge, and live with conscious awareness of God rise in rank. Fourth, taqwa stabilizes dignity. It is vigilant awareness before God, a steady inner guard that protects intention and governs action. Through taqwa, potential becomes elevation, and that is the resolution of the debate. The Quran does not invite you to compare yourself with angels. It invites you to confront yourself. You are created with the capacity to rise, but capacity is not destiny. It must be directed. Because potential without guidance can scatter, and elevation without orientation cannot endure. In our next episode of Reflection, we turn to a question that follows naturally from this one. If human beings can rise, who shows them the way? If dignity is given and superiority is conditional, who anchors humanity in truth? The Quran tells us that on the day of resurrection, every people will be called by their imam or leader. And that is what we will explore next. If this reflection resonated with you, consider supporting the channel. Our analytics show that nearly 60% of the people who watch these episodes are not yet subscribed. Subscribing does not cost anything, but it helps the channel grow and allows these reflections to reach others. So if you find value in these conversations, subscribe for future episodes of Reflection. Leave your thoughts in comments below. If this discussion benefited you, give the video a thumbs up. It helps this message reach more people. Until next week, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.